Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. We have a line of people waiting to come in upstairs. We wanted to try to give them a little more chance to join us. So good afternoon. My name is Kathy Dumlau. I'm the Director of Education here at the Brooks, and we're so pleased to be able to welcome you to our panel discussion today on NFTs. I know I'm planning to learn a few things. So today's talk is going to feature two of the artists whose work is currently on view in the exhibition Another Dimension Digital Art in Memphis. I hope you had a chance to check out the exhibition before the talk today. And if you didn't, please make a point to check it out before you leave. It's right across from the entrance to the auditorium. So our first artist who I'm going to introduce was born in South Haven, Mississippi, but is now based in Dallas, Texas. Anthony Sims is a painter and digital artist whose bold, chaotic expressions resurrect the Mississippi Delta blues through the lens of street culture and American hip hop. In recent years, he's found success in the world of NFTs, selling his work on the super rare marketplace. We're glad you're here today. Born and raised in Memphis, Kenneth Wayne Alexander is a painter, motion artist, and curator. He began experimenting with digital art in 2005, and in recent years, he's ventured into the world of NFTs, partnering with Black Dove Gallery, an online platform and physical gallery specializing in digital art. He has exhibited his work at Art Basel, Mississippi. Sorry. Art Basel, Miami, and NFT NYC, and of course, he has work here today, and he's also shown work here in the past. So Tam Gryn is a curator and originally from Venezuela and the author of a recently published book, How to Create and Sell NFTs, a Guide for All Artists. She's the former director of fine arts at Rally.io, where she helped artistic communities create their own autonomous crypto economies. She's also head curator at Showfields, contributor to the Bankless DAO and Friends with Benefits, and has lectured at Harvard Business School and the New York Academy of the Arts. She's the former head of the curatorial department of the Artist Pension Trust, as well as head curator for Raw Pop-Up. Tam studied art history at the Sorbonne University, politics at Reichman University, and negotiation at Tel Aviv University. Last but not least, we're glad all of y'all are here today. Our panel discussion is going to be moderated by Patty Daigle, who is the Associate Curator of Modern and Contemporary Art here at the Brooks and curator of the exhibition Another Dimension Digital Art in Memphis. So welcome to all, and I'm going to hand it over to Patty.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here this afternoon. I'm just really, really excited. We had a great talk last night with some of the artists that were in the exhibition, and today we have the opportunity to hear from two more of the artists whose work you can see. And we're also really happy and lucky to have Tam coming in from Miami. I came across her in another panel on NFTs, and I must admit I was sort of a novice to some of this. And so I found the way that Tam really spoke about NFTs and blockchain technology, which she'll do today, to be really approachable and really easy to understand, because sometimes you really can get lost in it all. And so, yeah, this exhibition, hopefully you'll get a chance to see it if you haven't already, really was sort of an experimental kind of show for us. We've never done a show that had digital art as its sort of main topic. We did do a video game show a few years ago that we borrowed from the Smithsonian. But this was really our first foray into digital art kind of exclusively. So we're really excited to have you all here. So I figured what better way to start than to sort of get an introduction to NFTs. Some of you might be experts, some of you might not know what NFT stands for. So I thought it would be great for Tam to kind of just introduce us to this world, because she's really an expert. And also has published recently a book, literally a handbook. So if you are an artist and or if you're not, and you're curious about minting an NFT and selling NFTs, I highly encourage you to pick up this book. So take it away, Tam.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm Tam, and I'll tell you a little bit about how I got into this world of NFTs. So I'm an art curator, and I'm used to doing physical art exhibitions, always interested in like the new art movements that are coming. And then I started hearing from my artist friends back in 2017 that they started minting art on the blockchain. And I knew about what Bitcoin was, but I didn't know what art on the blockchain was. And I started investigating, and I realized like this technology had the potential to completely transform the art world, the art market, and any creative industry. So I stopped everything that I was doing at the time to do research on the subject. And very soon I started joining decentralized autonomous organizations online and talking to people in online communities. And I was spending like 15 hours a day on one-on-one calls with my artist friends, just explaining to them that they needed to use this technology. And that wasn't really like the best use of my time, spending, one-on-one calls. It's like, what are NFTs? What is the blockchain? What is Ethereum? What are all these new concepts? So I decided to create a 5-week class to invite 200 artists at the same time to learn about this technology so that they can empower themselves. And then after 2 years of giving this class over and over, I was like, I partnered with Magnus Resch, who's a professor of art economics at Yale, and he's written like 7 books on the art market to just put all of this information down on paper so that it's super accessible for anybody who wants to learn and pick up a book and take their time and do their research. But the most important thing, about why this technology is important is because of the time that we're living now. And right now we're living in the middle of a digitalization movement. So COVID obviously changed the world. All of us many of us became remote workers. Many of our children started learning online. And we were spending all day on Zoom, on our phones, on our laptops. Social media engagement actually increased 61%. Actually, our physical or our human interactions, 65% of our human interactions became purely digital. So the video game industry, which is a huge part of this NFT movement, the crypto movement, is now larger than all of Hollywood entertainment and North American sports combined in terms of an industry. And that is why all of a sudden digital art resonates with more people than it ever has, because people are used to living through screens and interacting through screens. And art's job, no matter what time we are living, is to reflect society. So we are the last generation that does not own or does not understand the concept of digital assets. All future generations will own digital assets. And just to give you an example of what a digital asset is that we're all familiar with, for example, the Brooks Museum has a website, thebrooksmuseum.com, or I have my own website, tamgryn.com. That .com is a digital asset that we can own. And some of these digital assets are really valuable. And right now, digital assets come in the form of all kinds of files, like photos and books and songs and videos, and any file can be a digital asset that doesn't just exist in the internet, but that we can claim and own. Everybody can become an investor now. You don't need to, go to a trading platform and start buying stocks and bonds to call yourself an investor. But investing in artists through digital assets is making culture a whole asset investment class. So art and gaming are 2 completely different industries that are clashing together, and they're creating this new cultural supercontinent. And I personally think video games are a new medium of post-contemporary art, just like painting is a medium, sculpture is a medium, photography is a medium. Video games are also a new medium of contemporary art. And nobody understands crypto better than people who are gamers, people who have been playing video games in their screens since the 90s, many of them anonymously. They really understand digital communities. They understand digital collectibles. I'll give you an example. I have a 7-year-old son who has to play, has an app for school that gives him points every time he completes like a math or a language program. And he has like a little profile avatar. So whenever he gets coins for his math lessons, then he can use those coins to buy a shirt or a motorcycle or a t-shirt or a hat for his avatar. That is exactly what this industry is about. It's about your digital identity, the assets, the digital assets that you can get, and using cryptocurrency instead of like fake coins or fake points as real money that is valuable in these exchanges. And then why is this happening right now? Because since social media appeared, Facebook, which is the major platform, Meta, it became cultural centralization. It's a company that it's owned by one person who literally owns all of our data. So there's been a reaction towards this movement of cultural centralization, that they basically monetize it. They monetize on our content and they sell us ads. They take the content that we create, sell it to advertising companies, and then they sell us back ads when we use these platforms, which are free. So that's to be expected. And then crypto or blockchain technology means decentralization. It means all data is owned by a lot of different people and not by one central company. So it also means anonymity, potentially. It means avatars and self-expression, and it comes from cyberpunk culture. I said, like, one of the roots of this movement comes from the Cyberpunk Manifesto, which says that no government or company could own our data and track every single step that we take in the digital world. So right now, I truly believe, looking at history, that we're living in a new sort of renaissance. Okay, so what happened in the last renaissance that took us from the Dark Ages to the Renaissance? It was technology, specifically two different types of technology: wealth technology and information technology. So what happened during the Dark Ages was the creation of the printing press. Before that, it was only the church and the monarchy that were allowed to print books or to print any sort of new idea and distribute them to society. And all of a sudden, with the creation of the printing press, any artist could draw something and print it and distribute it. And any single person could write a text and print it and distribute it. So all of a sudden, the floodgates of information, completely open, and everybody had access to all kinds of new ideas and new information. And at the same time, there were people like the Medicis, which were a family that was not noble, like they were not from the nobility, but they created wealth and using accounting systems. Before that, there wasn't really the ledger accounting systems that we know today. So with this technology, people could account for all the money that was coming in and all the money that was leaving their accounts. And it gave people the power to harness their own wealth. So the combination of information technology and wealth technology created this cultural revolution that we call the Renaissance. And right now, blockchain technology is this, the internet is exactly the same as the printing press. And crypto is just like the level ledger booking system. So it's a technology that allows us to decentralize information and decentralize wealth, decentralize it from banks and decentralize it from government power. And this is the people who are building this technology and promoting this technology are using artists, just like the Medicis used Leonardo da Vinci and Donatello and all the artists that we know the Renaissance for, to promote these values of decentralization and technology through NFTs. And some of these artists are examples of promoting these values through art and the power of technology. So if we look at the internet that was created in the 80s, right now we have a little bit of retrospective. So when the internet was created, it was mostly websites, like static websites, marketplaces, where we as customers could go in and just, either buy things or just look and read at newspapers or use our email, improve communications, etc. So we call this stage Web 1. Web 1 is the stage where we as users, we can read the internet. And obviously the companies at the time, like Yahoo and all the Web 1 companies, they would create all of the value of the internet, and they would also monetize from all of the value of the internet. And then in the 2000s, we have a very clear distinction called Web 2, which is when social media appears in companies like Uber, where the gig economy appears. And all of a sudden, we're not just looking at the internet, we're creating most of the value of the internet. We're uploading our photography, we're uploading our songs, our text, our music. We're working maybe for companies like Uber and Lyft and participating in this economy. However, we don't really own any of that data. When we upload a picture of our children online, we don't own that photo. Meta owns the data to that photo. So it's still major companies that are profiting from the value that we put on the internet on a daily basis. And this is why Web3 is being created. Right now, we're beginning this new era that is called Web3, where we're not just reading the internet or like reading and writing the internet, we are not owning the internet. So every time we upload a digital asset, whether it's art, music, video, text, anything, onto the blockchain, we own it. No, there's no other company that owns it. We, as the creators of that culture, we own that culture. And if somebody wants to buy it, they have a very specific contract that transfers that ownership to them. So because we own that content, we get to monetize from that content. And this is the importance of Web3. So there's different types of business models that are being created. So in Web 1, we saw the business model of companies, it's their business model. In Web 2, we saw the business model of, a good example would be like influencers, which is like, this is my business model. I work with brands that pay me to like promote their products. It's mostly based on advertising. And there's also companies like Patreon, if you know what that is, where you can pay an artist to like follow them closer. So for example, you pay $25 a month to follow Anthony's work, and you get like behind the scenes about it. But the thing with companies like Spotify and Patreon is that the money is still going from the fan to the artist, from the collector to the artist, and it's very one-directional, okay? What happens in Web3 is that this model is completely broken, and instead of the money going in one direction, the money starts moving in circles. Crypto money starts moving in circles. So for example, if you hold Bitcoin or if you hold Ethereum, everybody in this room holds Bitcoin. Bitcoin is becoming like a communal asset, a community asset. And we all want Bitcoin to do well because we all hold it. So for example, if an artist launches their own cryptocurrency, or let's say for the sake of the example, the Brooks Museum launches like the Brooks token, and everybody who's part of this community and everybody who's all of us part of this ecosystem has that asset, then we are shareholders in this economy together. And these assets move in circles. Like you come to this talk, and then I buy something at the retail shop, and then it just keeps moving and flowing in community circles. So if you think about the arts market right now, before NFTs, it just promotes the myth of the starving artist, okay? To give an example of a very famous artist like David Hockney, when he started his career, he started selling at his gallery for $2,000 to $5,000 a painting. And usually the gallery takes 50% of the cut, because of course they're installing the work, they're bringing the collectors, they're promoting. All that David has to do is paint and give their painting to the gallery, right? So the gallery sells the work for $5,000. David gives $2,500, and then he has amazing talent. He has the it factor. He keeps creating amazing work. That collector who bought David's work sells it to another collector for $10,000 because David is doing well. And then that collector sells it again for 20 and 30 and 40. And then eventually that piece ends up in some storage in Luxembourg, evading taxes. 20 years later, an anonymous collector makes it appear at Christie's, and then it sells for $90 million. How much does David Hockney get to keep from that $90 million? Zero. Zero. Okay, so there is nothing that protects artists' work in the secondary market. Yeah, so like some people are like, yeah, he's gonna do well because it's prestigious for him and the work is gonna, probably other people are gonna buy his work for a lot of money. But yeah, that piece, he got $5,000 for it or $2,500 for it. So it's not fair. So I put a lot of memes in my presentations because crypto culture is so much about memes. But basically, I get this question all the time, like, why are millennials and Gen Z spending millions and thousands of dollars on like stupid JPEGs, right? So my parents' generation, whenever they had like a little bit of wealth, they would buy a physical asset, usually a house. And then if they had like a little bit more money, then they would maybe buy another house, or that's how people used to spend money a generation ago. So our generation is like dropping thousands of dollars on like pet Ethereum rocks or monkeys or penguins or like all kinds of weird avatars. And what does this all mean? Why does this make any sense? Is our NFTs a scam, which is something that I hear almost every day in my DMs? Or are they the future of the art world? What does NFTs have to do with this David Hockney story? This is the artwork of Ferocious, which is one of the most important NFT artists. They're born in 2003, so they're super young. He's super young. And he created a series of works from his teenage years that were full of suffering. So this piece is called Year One, Age 14, It Hurts to Hide. And here, Ferocious minted means uploaded his work onto the blockchain. So as an NFT, which means non-fungible token. And this piece was sold at Christie's, at Sotheby's last year. So here you can see the wallet address, which means the digital wallet that is currently holding Ferocious's work as a digital asset, and you can see this long number. Then you can see the smart contract address, which means the NFT. The NFT is the contract. And you can see, if you want to see, oh, where is Ferocious's work right now, then you can type into the Ethereum software this address, and you will see immediately like which collector holds it. So it can't really disappear. And then it said, it's a single channel video. So it's a video, non-fungible token. It has all the information about it, made in 2021. Now this video comes with a physical painting, which is unique. This video is unique, it comes with a physical painting that is unique. Whenever an artist uploads their work, mints their work into the blockchain, they get to decide how much percentage they want to keep from the work. Not only in the primary sale, but also in the secondary market. So for example, Ferocious can say, I'm going to keep 80% of the profits of the primary sale and give 20% to Sotheby's for helping me sell his work. And then in the secondary market, it's usually the collector keeps 80% or 90%, and then the artist gets to keep usually 10%, and maybe Sotheby's will keep another 10%. So what does this all mean? With NFTs is the first time in the history of the art market that we're talking about perpetual royalties for artists for the first time in history. So what is an NFT? An NFT is a smart contract. It's a contract between the artist and whoever is buying the work. But this technology is so interesting, it can do many things at once. So an NFT is also the actual piece of digital art, the format in which holds the video or the photo or the song or everything at once. And it is also the transaction. It's also like the actual bank transfer that goes from one collector to the other in the payment system. And it is also the certificate of authenticity. Every single piece of art that you see in this museum has a paper certificate of authenticity that says which artist made the piece. So the NFT is like all of those technologies in one. And that's why I say blockchain technology is like the baby of the internet plus your bank together. It's extremely powerful technology that can do a lot of things at once for creative people. Yeah, and I just gonna say something really quick as like an example of what can be done with NFTs. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with NFTs or familiar with this character right here. It's called Aku, and he was made by an artist called Micah Johnson, who created this character called Aku. He's an astronaut, and he released 10 chapters of the story of this kid who wants to be an astronaut. And they're sequential stories in the form of 10 NFTs. And now, people got so excited about Aku. He has an amazing, thriving community of collectors. And he just, right now, they're signing deals for Aku to become a movie character and series in Hollywood. They're doing Netflix and Disney and all these kinds of deals. And the collectors of Aku get to vote within the community about like the story of it and what is Aku gonna do next. And everybody who holds that digital asset that they own and they bought is gonna see this asset grow together as a community because of these deals that are happening in the media. CryptoPunks are one of the two most important NFT collections historically. They're actually being collected by museums as well right now. And they also signing deals with Hollywood in order to make them, serious. So my point with this is that imagine that it's the 1990s and you saw some cool artwork on the internet about like this yellow family that lives in the suburbs and they're called the Simpsons. And you're like, oh, I want to buy this NFT of like Bart Simpson. Sounds like kind of stupid, but if you had bought it and then it becomes what it becomes in mainstream culture, then you would hold to your name a piece of that culture, and that artist would always be rewarded eternally for having created it. So that's as fast as I know. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to process, and I'm sure many of you are going to be thinking about this after you leave here, which is great. That's what we want you to be able to do. Thank you so much, Tam, for that really like crash course in NFTs and blockchain technology. The reason I wanted to have this talk, and part of the sort of genesis for the show too, is I want us to think about digital art as it is right now, and it's in the news quite a bit in sort of mainstream culture. But there's many people think about NFTs as a fad, and it's in certain ways it really very much is. But for me, I see something there that's really important and pivotal and potentially very useful. And I think we can all agree that our lives have been, the idea that the digital is somehow separate from our lives is really hard to even imagine. So I do think that there's so much that we can kind of get from this moment. And so that's why I titled this panel session, NFTs beyond boom or bust, because I think we're so fixated on what's going to happen, right? Like, is this whole thing going to come crumbling down? And so for me, my question more is like, what can we take from this that we can really constructively build on and move forward with? And I think there's a lot there. And so
just to segue into Kenny Wayne, you're an artist who's been working, in many ways, I think you're really kind of ahead of your time because you've been doing this for years. So I wanted the audience to really get a sense of how you came into digital art and your sort of motion videos, and just speaking about that and learning more about kind of your history.
Okay, how you all doing? I am Kenneth Alexander. I'm born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. I started my art journey when I was a kid. I was 4 years old, drawing and sketching Dragon Balls and Street Fighter to Ninja Turtles, like you can name it. And once I got into more academia with my work, I started learning more and more about surrealism and more about graphite and more about the textile style of art. And that allowed me to expand my mind in a way to where I can try out so many different assets of the art world and build ideas on it and build so much intuitive ideas and works in my coming future. And I created this piece back in 2005. This piece actually got me to Washington, D.C. for an AXO competition that I placed first here in Memphis for drawing, and took me there, and I seen so many pieces from so many different parts of the world, so many different people, mindsets, and it opened me up to so many ways to make this a real thing. And my teacher around that time, Miss Burton, I was in high school, and I was in the 10th grade when she told me this. She said, if you love something, create it so someone else can love it more. And that allowed me to get more and more into the art business side of it at a very young age. And I knew this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And when I got more and more into it, I started to incorporate my mind, when I see in my vision, because I'm a producer as well, and I have something called synesthesia. So I see sound in my head, and I always wanted to make my art move in it. And I started getting more and more into anime drawing more because it taught me a lot about perspective and visualizing story and different things like that. And this is more of my recent works. This is the Star Stage. This is a story that I'm creating alongside Quinn McGowan and Aubrey Horton. And this started back in 2016, where I wanted to create this ideal world that's set 300 years in the future. And it's based in Memphis. And it's we'll be the precursor to the whole thing. So like the descendants of this time will be these new element users that this scientist in African named Berry created this way to where it's animals and people elements. We started wars on territory, not money. And when it happened, Memphis was destroyed during the whole wartime. And so the descendants of Memphis wanted to create this new city with different remnants that would live with it. And the remnants of Memphis was floating in the sky. And so they created a new city called Sky Club City in the remnants of Memphis. And this is where the whole thing starts. And that's going to be the whole purpose behind the whole thing. And the main character, Jason Walker, in the Village of Blue, and his brother Anthony Walker are the two main protagonists in the story. And the villain is not here. His name is Tam G. Tam G deals in the truth, and the two protagonists want to be protectors with their mind to themselves on what kind of protection they want to be. And so that's the whole picture of the whole entire thing. And all of these things can be assets on the digital market, and they will be once they are released to the actual public. Like these are certain ways that you can create your own dichotomy of your own ideas and have it in a way to where, oh, I can have this in a physical and a digital space because this is where life is going. Life is becoming more and more of a hybrid of traditional and digital ways of thinking. And so I wanted to incorporate it into my work.
Sorry to interrupt, but how did you get from, I guess, working in this method, right, very traditional kind of, portrait, very figurative, into what you do, even with anime? Like, what did it take to make that kind of leap?
When I was in the 10th grade, I was in Miss Wildman's class in Overton. And I had, they had a program called Photoshop 3 that was on the computer. And when I seen it, and when we started doing more classes and tests on the whole entire program, I saw this as a way to push the gambit forward with art. Because, man, it's a whole new canvas. It's a digital canvas. It's a whole new canvas. And why not learn more about this and create what I want to create in this way, because I have more validity and more variety to combine different things that way. And that got me into making different sort of collages like this when I was like back in the day, learning how to understand, well, pretty much use my traditional knowledge and apply it to my digital knowledge, because I'm well versed in surrealism with Create, Dali, like people like that helped bend reality before this was a thing. And just seeing the persistence of memory and just seeing that piece in its entirety, which is actually crazy. Like the piece is actually pretty small, like it's mad small, but it like the significance of it is incredible, because it allows people to see things in different way. And I took a lot from the Greek as well, because the Greek used to cover the faces of his subject matters, like with an apple or a horse, whatever it is. And it was a way to experience memory or experience another metaphorical way to tell a story in very, very simple things. And I want to merge all of that into one style.
We'll take a look, and I'll go forward a bit.
Is
that your back? That's your
yeah,
back guy?
yeah, that's the villain. Yeah, that's the villain. That's Jason, that's Anthony, that's Tanker. And so this is more of my painting work here. This is the foundation holding two presidents. I kept wanting to have both physical and digital practices within my work, because it allowed me to build to where I am now. I have done 25 different exhibitions around the US to this day. And what's funny, when I got into the more NFT work, I didn't even know NFTs were a thing before it was a thing. And I was just making my digital artwork and my motion artwork. And I had friends and family that was basically emailing me saying, yo, you heard about this new thing, like this new NFT thing? Like, I know you on it, Johnny. I have no idea what you're talking about. and so when I looked more into it, I saw this great opportunity to really learn more about what this is, because I believe the NFT market is the precursor to something really, really great that's coming in the future for our work, well, for artists in general. And this is more of my digital work, more my recent digital work. And it's more based on like the new frontier, like the new way of thinking, like Black futurism, what does it look like to be a Black man in this space? Because like being in parts of it and being who I am, like I'm really in a very unique position to create a real story and create real history, and to create something meaningful that will take years and years of learning and dedication to really make it a statement, and so people can learn from what I did. And that's part of my whole mission, is to become like a legacy for this actual way of making artwork. And with the NFT, I know like it's a very new thing, and it has the backlashes, because you will always get like bad apples in any new thing. But when it comes to the wholeness of it, this is a way for artists to really have ownership within their work, like to the point where it's almost 100%. And how Tam was talking about earlier when it came to the blockchain. Like how I grew to understand the blockchain, I compared it to having a signature on a painting, because you cannot copy an original signature on a painting. You can try, but there's ways to catch it. With the blockchain, there's ways to catch people trying to copy a actual number that's imprinted within that actual work itself. So it's protecting the whole thing, which created a market. That is absolutely brilliant. Like that is literally a new way of thinking, a new way to show and experience work, and to be a fly on the wall, just to hear that initial conversation about that is something else. And so
Just show, two of your motion videos here.
oh yeah, so these two actually have music with them. This is like a whole encompassing feeling of my work. This piece was shown in Art Basel last year with our McCall gallery. And so like that's like a whole encompassing, I say that's like a very high grade level of my work in its entirety. And it encompasses drawing, painting, collaging, music, and motion video all into one. And I created this style all through just trial and error and learning from what I did in the past. And I have another one too.
Yeah.
This one was shown in the Midtown Market, the Midtown Market area in Miami during
Go back. Just for the sake of time, but I mean, what I love about these works is like, they kind of just keep going, and so it's very different from like video, because it really feels like an object, because it's kind of like contained, and it loops, and something about it functions really differently, and I'm not, like I'm fairly new to work like this, and it's really interesting that it kind of has opened up this like new kind of format too for experiencing.
Yeah, I call it like still motion, and it still has the effects of how you see a painting, and then it has a new way of looking at an actual motion video, and I mold that into one thing, and it has a good marriage in my opinion, because it gives it so many layers of understanding. Like even if you can't understand like the emotion part of it, you can pause it and not take in what you see.
And I just wanted to give folks a view of how you sell it and sort of show your work online. And maybe I'll give you a chance to talk to, because I think Anthony, you have a similar kind of platform, although different. Maybe y'all can talk about that kind of together, but just how your work lives in the marketplace too. So for the sake of time, let's just keep moving on to Anthony. Anthony Sims, all the way from Dallas, although from this region originally. And what I think is really cool about both of your work too is that you're both painters, right? And you both work in other media, and you continue to create physical works of art. And they're often tied with your NFTs. So I'd love it if you could talk about that too.
I'm Anthony, like you were saying. And so this particular piece I made in LA last year for my debut show there. And so kind of, briefly before everything, they kind of talked about how my art also ties into hip hop, because that's one of the primary drivers for me to create, because when I create things, it's sort of like a freestyle. I don't think about it. I just do it, and it just happens, and then it happens to turn out really cool sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't turn out really cool. And so, yeah, so I started, whenever I started making art in high school, it was cut paper portraits. So I was taking pictures, I was layering the light and using the light to make the depth of the face. But I didn't really feel like an artist. I was doing it because I was in like an art class, and that's what you're supposed to do. And so I didn't really know how to make like art, like how to really make something from your soul. And so, one of my friends, he was drawing, and what he was drawing was like these kind of grotesque drawings, and just sitting with him, it was like, oh, so like hip hop is what got me to understand the art of not trying to make art, which is how you make art from my perspective. And so seeing him do that just very loosely, I understood that, hip hop was something that kind of raised me. So that was one thing that really has been present to me. So being able to listen to music and just close my eyes and just draw a quick sketch is how I learned to start drawing. And then whenever I was in college, I went to school for electrical engineering, so I didn't actually go to school for art. And there's a Walmart not far from our school. And so that's where I went, and I just got art supplies to paint in my dorm. And that's where I started painting. And then I just started coming to Memphis and meeting people in Memphis. I met a really awesome dude named Jonathan Cooper, who kind of showed me how to do art shows and kind of taught me the business of stuff. And one of my first real communities while I was in college painting was on Twitter. That was kind of the first group of, because I didn't go to art school, so I didn't have the feedback you would get from art school, which is why art school is important, because you get to be surrounded by peers that are like-minded, that can critique you and help you move your skill and craft further. But I found that through Twitter. And the majority of the artists on Twitter at the time were digital artists. So they were making just purely digital art, but some of them were making physical paintings and things. And so, around 2020, I found out about NFTs that summer because, I was working on robots at the time, but my friends who were full-time artists that sold prints, they couldn't do like pop-up shows anymore. They couldn't do a lot of stuff to sell and make money to actually survive. And so they found out about NFTs, and I was learning about it indirectly through them, but I didn't really want to just dive into it because I wasn't natively digital. And I didn't want to feel like a poser, and I didn't want people to think of me, in that light. And so I just, chilled out for a little bit, learned about it. And, around October of 2020, I realized like, oh snap, like I'm an artist. That means I can make any type of art that I want to make. And I've made some digital art before. And so whenever I made that stuff, I didn't really take it very far, but I was kind of familiar with Procreate on the iPad, which is like a really simple version of Photoshop. And so that was really where I kind of came back to it. And whenever I started making NFTs or this digital stuff, I started in December of 2020, just focusing purely kind of digital, just to get a better grasp of how I can take my art digitally. And what I started to do is I started to take pictures of my paintings and collage them for the background. And sometimes they wouldn't work well, so I'd have to like digitally paint over like sections of them. And I do a lot of boxes in my work. It really helps me kind of think, especially whenever I'm not in this. So there's a thing called Wu Wei. That's kind of the flow state that I described about like freestyles and stuff. So when I can't really tap into that state of mind, I like to write and make boxes. And so I took that box concept for my paintings to these collages to make the collage work better. And then I started illustrating on top of it. And so this was kind of my first real foundation of this purely digital art. And as I kind of got more, and so Tam talked about Ferocious. Ferocious was one of the first artists that I met on Twitter, and it blew my mind because Ferocious was making work that was way better than me and my peers, while also being like 5 years younger than us. So that was like the whole thing. But following this kind of thing was Ferocious was one of the first artists I really saw that was doing digital and physical simultaneously. And so that was another reason I was like, oh wait, like I don't just have to be making these digital pieces. I can also be, taking a physical painting that I made, attaching an NFT to it, and then, selling it, putting it in the marketplace as a physical NFT. And as I kind of got more into it, this, like she was saying, Ferocious is one of the most influential artists. I was like, oh snap, like Ferocious has a painting that they animated. I can now start animating my painting. So now I can take the physical piece beyond just what I was doing previously, which was using physical art to serve as the background for the digital art. Now I can take the physical art and make a whole different digital aspects to the physical art. So I can really push this medium forward of what is a physical painting. Like, can you experience a physical painting in a different way? And so once I started kind of getting to the animations, like I was doing some of my first animations, which they were really simple. They're super easy to do, wouldn't take very long to do it. But I wanted to continuously push that forward. So at the time, my sleeping schedule was a little weird, kind of like it is now, but I was on the same sleeping schedule as people in Indonesia. So I made a lot of Indonesian art friends, and we started collaborating and doing animations as well. So this is, more of my physical work. I made this in 2020. It's a lot calmer than the majority of my pieces. I think that definitely has part to play with the current situation of the world at the time. And this next piece was, so this one was inspired by another song. And in the song, he says, I was taking the hand I was dealt, and I dealt with it. And so that's kind of this, the underdog motivating factor of what drives me to have ambition to not necessarily just make art, but make art in a big way. And so that's kind of where this was inspired from. It's like, no matter where you start in life, you can take yourself really anywhere if you believe in yourself and you work hard. And now, yes, there has a lot of like luck and different things that fall into place, but luck tends to favor those who are putting in the effort regardless. And so, yeah. And so this is kind of the epitome of that. And whenever it came to this luck thing, I made this when I was 21, and the Meridian Museum of Art accepted it into their permanent collection. And that, made me one of the youngest living artists to be accepted in a permanent collection. And so that was kind of like a really mind-blowing thing of like, not only is this something that not only does this painting mean something to me, now it can represent something because it did something. And so that's where this one comes in at. And this is the most recent painting I've made. I made this one in Dallas. I was listening to a lot of Benny the Butcher, which is another artist. And so, that was kind of this concept there. Now, I don't normally use purple But my best friend, when he was in town, we went to the art store and he just grabbed purple and all these like, use this. I'm like, all right, that like I got. And so that's where this comes from. That's why I named it purple, just because, you know. And so yeah, this is my most recent one. And then these
We can come back to this.
okay, cool.
I kind of want folks to see this. You can tell us a bit about, you mentioned being on the same time clock, the world clock as Indonesia or parts of Asia. I think it's so fascinating that this idea of community and where you can find community, which, you know, I think for us folks who are not involved with NFTs or digital art heavily, I mean, we think about like connecting virtually as like signing on to a Zoom meeting that we all dread, or something like, or like virtual school being horrible, or taking classes online being horrible. And so the fact that you're able to find like joy, to find connection and community online is really awesome. But can you tell us just briefly about this, and we'll show it as well. And
Yeah, so this painting is like a 4 foot by 5 foot painting. I spent a couple months working on it. It took various different forms. You know, it's acrylic, oil, there's a bunch of different materials that I used. I used a soda can. I wired a soda can to it for some reason. So during COVID, whenever like the toilet paper thing happened, I was one of the unfortunate people to not like be aware that that was going on. So I ordered toilet paper on the internet, and I was like, well, if I'm gonna pay this much for toilet paper, I'm gonna have some fun with it. So right here in the net, above this gray guy, there's what looks like $100 bill. That's toilet paper with $100 bills printed on it. That I just kind of thought was funny, because it was, to me, it was kind of this representation of, wow, like not only is, you know, GameStop becoming a hot commodity again, but toilet paper is now, a hot commodity. So that was kind of this notion of that. And, I sat on this painting for a little while, and after I had achieved some level of success in the NFT world, I realized that if I really truly wanted to be a full-time artist, if this was something that I was really going to dedicate my life to, I would be foolish to not do it when I'm, I was making the same kind of money that I was making at my job working on robots. So I was like, all of my art friends took bigger risks than this. Like this is nothing. Like if I fail, oh well, like it is what it is. At least I tried. And so, Tiger Paul, which is the Indonesian artist that I partnered with on this project. So I made the whole painting, but Tiger Paw partnered with them in like February, March, and then they got busy, and they were working on a bunch of collaborations and things, and they sent it to me in May. And the day I put in my like 2 weeks notice to Amazon, I was like, hey, so like I'm due for a promotion, blah 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 blah. They're offering me all this stuff because I was like pretty decent at my job. And I put in my 2 weeks notice that day, and I went to Twitter and I was like, hey guys, like I'm gonna be one of you now. Like I'm gonna be a full-time artist. I'm really gonna do it. And I was like, all right, well, Tiger, this is the most recent digital thing that I have. So, I had listed something previously, probably like a month earlier. So I was like, it's time for another one to list another one. I listed it and I titled it, kind of in conjunction with where I was at in life, but also with what I wrote on it. Not sure about myself, I'm certain. And then if you want to go to the animation, this is what Tiger Paw did to my painting.
you are sensitive to moving images, you may want to avert your gaze. Yeah.
And so Tiger Paw was able to turn it into this animated 3D loop and really just create an entirely new way to experience what was a two-dimensional painting. And we listed it, or I technically listed it, but me and Tiger Paul split everything 50-50. And within like an hour, I had a bid on it, and it was at the peak of ETH in 2021. And it was 24.25 ETH. So at the time, that was like $99,000. And, you know, I live with my girlfriend, but she was in Austin. All of my friends and stuff, like they were at work. And so there I was just at home alone, like just in front of me. Like I just made whatever, I just get this bid. And then the guy who actually bid on it, as soon as I saw it, I accepted it because I was like, I'd be dumb not to accept this. But, the blockchain can take some time to really process transactions. And the collector DM'd me and he was like, oh, like, is that good? Like, I know there's a couple other collectors like looking around right now. Like, are you gonna accept it? He was like worried, and I was like, bro, like, what are you talking about? Like, it's already done. Like, and so that was this really big turning point for me. It was like, it was the you can hear things and listen to things, but you don't get it until you get it. And so this was the really defining factor of like, all you really truly need to succeed as an artist is self-belief. Because if you believe in yourself, other people will believe in yourself or you. But like, there is, so that was like, there was no reason for him to pay that much money for anything that I've made, because at the time, I think my highest sell was like, it was still pretty high, but it was $15,000 USD. But like, a year before that, I was not making close to any of that type of money. And so like with my painting, so for these collectors to come in and hold my art as this very valuable commodity was very gratifying for me, because I was going to school, learning how to wire PLCs and program factories while simultaneously painting every night before I went to bed and posting on social media and having my my friends on there critique me and kind of living this double life. My first name is Robert, so everyone at my work or college, everyone called me Robert Sims. But everyone else in the world knew me as Anthony Sims. So it was like this weird, like, juxtaposition to the way I was, living. And so the engineering stuff also helped me have a quicker kind of grasp of understanding the importance of the technology that was present through blockchain. But yeah, so that's what this one is.
Thank you so much. For the sake of time, I did want to leave some time if anybody wants to stick around for a Q&A. So if any of you have any questions, I have questions too, but I wanted to give you all a chance to ask any of our artists or Tam a question.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about like copyright and things like that. You talked about, you just talked about you sold this image, so presumably you don't own this anymore, and yet here we are displaying it on the screen and broadcasting it over Zoom. What kind of protections are available for things like that?
Well, so in terms of copyright, right now, like so as an artist, I retain copyright of all my work unless I explicitly say this is, Creative Commons, which a lot of artists have done. One of my favorite artists, he's a glitch artist, Xcopy. He has he created a thing kind of playing on people who don't like NFTs called Right Click Save Guy. And he made it Creative Commons so that anyone could use it. And so for myself personally, I have a logo, and I've been debating on if I want to make that the Creative Commons logo. But most of the time, so like the communities are really honest and caring. So if if you steal my images and you upload them, most of the time within a couple of days, someone that knows me has said, hey, Anthony, someone's stealing your artwork. I had one dude I didn't mint anything on Tezos before this year, and I had one dude minting some of my stuff on Tezos. And so what happens is, I'm not the money that they made, it's the blockchain, it's the Wild West, it's whatever. But those paintings, they get taken down, the accounts get banned, and even though we're creating this decentralized space, each DAO has a kind of like a constitution that they follow. So when you join a DAO, you still have some centralization of rules that you're all following. So it's the epitome of what anarchy is supposed to be, without a ruler, but with rules. And so that's kind of this also notion of what she was saying of this what crypto is and the ideologies that come behind it. And so there's a lot of protections in terms of like that. But if you were to put this on a t-shirt, I would have to go like the normal route I would go if you saw it in a museum, take a picture of it and put a t-shirt on, which would be, just being like, hey, whoever, so if you're drop shipping, go to that person. If you're making it yourself, then I would just like social blast you and let everyone know that you're stealing stuff. So that's kind of the way you have to do it in terms of that. So yeah, I hope that answers.
Sort of.
Okay.
So I'm just curious though, because contrary to what was stated earlier, the image itself is not stored in this smart contract. If you're retaining the copyright as well, then what exactly are you selling?
You're selling, so just because I sell you a painting doesn't mean you have the right to print it on t-shirts. So like
That's true for all physical art.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't realize this, but in a museum, if it's not in the public domain, meaning, if it was anything modern or contemporary as an example, even the museum, we might own a painting, or say Warhol as a very obvious example. We might own a painting by Warhol, but we don't own the copyright to that. And every time we want to reproduce it, even just like in a newsletter, that's our newsletter, we would have to actually go to usually the foundation or the Warhol Foundation as an example and get permission for that. So it's kind of the same thing in that way. But the difference here is that I think the question maybe also that the discomfort lies in the lack of a physical object. And we live, right click save, that idea, right? Like what's stopping people from doing that? So for me, it's like less about the copyright and more about what is the art, right? What is the object here? And I think that's where blockchain kind of comes into play.
Yeah, and also to further your answer to the question, when it comes to a digital asset, we have like your brand, like with the actual the circle X and O with the smile, and my brand, which is an angel wing that says nobody, which means those is virtual. That's my brand. And what I put into my actual IP, my copyright, like how it's made, like the materials, the process, the whole thing, all that's copyrighted. And so all that goes through me, like all that goes through my work. Like all my work is under nobody. And so if someone tries to steal my work, which has happened before, like 3 or 4 times, like people try to steal my work, and when it was caught by the community, which is very, very like supportive. Like I was able to take them, well, a few of them to court to say, yo, like this is my IP. Like this is all under nobody. You cannot have any of this. Like if you want this, come to me, like or credit me. But you cannot have this on a t-shirt, on a print, none of that if it does not go through me.
I have a whole chapter on answers like that in the book on IP. And I just briefly mentioned a few things regarding IP, but there's a company called Deviant Art that created a software called Protect Art that scans basically the entire internet to see, and the blockchain to see which was the first mint of the piece, and they're using it to protect, hundreds of thousands of artworks on the daily, which is super exciting beyond obviously the community as being the core value. And also there's many different ways to create smart contracts. Some of them the image or the video or the digital asset embedded onto it. And some platforms don't do that. But there are other technical solutions that are much more advanced. Like one of them is called IPFS, where you can store that information that, is connected to a smart contract with the image together. But that said, I mean, because we're in the context of a museum, like every single tech art that has ever existed, like since the 70s, people have had, both museums, institutions, and private collectors have had huge challenges with the format of collecting. Like imagine, net art in those first websites of the internet, like how do museums keep that technology that is like becoming obsolete, or VHS or Betamax or like CDs or floppy disks and USBs, like there's always going to be that challenge with tech art. But for the first time, there's like a self-executing technology where people can, not only share the art, but also transact with the art.
We have time for one more quick question if anyone has one.
For the secondary market, for subsequent transfers, do you guys build in smart contracts provisions for royalties, and has that come to fruition? Has it come to pass? Have you generated?
Yeah, that's becoming more and more of a regular thing. Like that's why talks like these are important, because it spreads that information not only to you all but to other artists as well, who need to understand that the secondary market is one of the most powerful markets within the art world. Like that's why you have Basquiat pieces like selling for like $300 million or things like that, and he's dead and gone. He's not seeing any of that. And so when it comes to living, breathing artists who needs to see that secondary money, they need to understand that all this needs to be written. Like the pen is the most powerful thing on this earth, besides the human brain. And when it comes to the power of saying like this is my COA or my authenticity paper, saying that okay, you own a part of this, but I still keep my publishing, or you own this whole thing, but I need a percentage on the secondary market once it goes up there. Like all that needs to be understood and written for each person.
Go ahead.
I also want to kind of add to that. The answer is, so a lot of artists don't know how to program or want to learn how to program. So a lot of marketplaces will allow you to set your royalties based on like when you're minting some. So like Super Rare, it's automatically 10%. And I think on OpenSea, you can go, I think the max is 10%. And then there's another marketplace, Rarible, with the max is like 50%. So you don't always have to program your own NFTs. So the marketplaces, you literally just it's like an Instagram post, except you just have to interact with a Web3 and approve and pay to upload the image that you're trying to upload, and it'll go to what she was saying, the marketplace's IPFS, which is like where their database, and then even some like Rarible and Super Rare allow you to create your own contracts through their platform. So it's very user-friendly for artists in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things that I've seen a clear distinction between the art world in Web2 and the art world in Web3 is that, in my entire career, I always heard artists say things like, if I sell this piece for $5,000 and I pay this month's rent, or there's always been that calculation of like how to price your work.
That's how we live.
Exactly. And then now I'm hearing artists that just like created abundance in a completely different way, where like money is coming into their wallet automatically, and they just create for the sake of creating, and they can create in ways that is not limited by like how much your rent costs on a monthly basis, which is true support for artists and like passive income, which has existed in many other creative industries like film before, but never existed in art. So that is like the true game changer.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, because royalties within art streaming is a whole new thing. Like it is one of the biggest booms in this NFT upheaval, because artists are now able to make money on a certain piece over time. So maybe like every quarter they may get a check or something like that from one of their pieces. But like for me, like I have a partnership with LG. Like I'm showing all around the world on their screens now from one piece, and I make royalties from that one piece like every 3 months. And so when it comes to the new age of it, like it is something very, 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 very like it's still like working out the kinks in the whole thing. I try to figure out what it really looks like for like a certain piece to do this certain thing. But that's where artists coming into like we're figuring out that template, we're figuring out that Bible, so to speak, for what it means to be a royalty funded NFT artist.
Okay, well, for the sake of time, I did want to wrap it up there. I think we've kind of done a deep scratch of the surface. And so I'm sure if you have any other questions, we'll stick around for a bit after the program. But thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon, and have a great day. And enjoy your visit here. Thank you.